Heading into week 8 of the NFL season, Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak on Inside Black and Gold, and mired in a 5-game skid. Saints haven't won since week 2 of the season. Players keep falling off the planet. Maybe we get some guys back this week, but we did get word from Dennis Allen. If we do get the car back, don't get the car back, I mean, it's still going to be Spencer on the center.
Yeah, he came out pretty early in the week and said that, which we'll have. Well, we can talk about that a lot more kind of later in this segment. I want to get through some of the news first, some of the stuff that's happened. But yeah, we're going to talk about Spence. They've been pretty straightforward about, like, we're not going to play games with this situation. We're going to tell you who our quarterback is, and we're going to tell him who our starting quarterback is, and we're going to go that way. And it's kind of refreshing in the sense that, the whole like debate throughout the course of the week would be annoying, although it would give us something to talk about on the podcast, because we haven't really had an opportunity to have like a spirited debate about who they should go with, which would require them not telling us on a Monday. But whatever. Anyway, we're going to hit some news in this segment. Then second segment, we're going to hear from senior offensive assistant Rick Dennison. He was on WWL this week, so we're going to play you that interview. Talked about the offensive line, talked about the run game, stuff like that, Trevor Penning, all that good stuff. Final segment, I want to kind of set up the next 5-7 games on the schedule. It's the part of the schedule that when you looked at it, when we went through it game by game at the beginning of the season, it was like, hey, if you can get here with like close to 500 record, you should be able to take advantage of this stretch and really kind of put yourself out in front of the division if you win a bunch of games, because there's a lot of winnable games in this stretch. It kind of feels like, hey, this is your last gasp of the season. Like, is the season done? Technically, no, but you have to seriously take advantage of this stretch of your schedule to even give yourself a chance. And nothing we've seen over the last month plus should make you feel like that's going to happen. But we're going to go through it. We're going to talk about, okay, what would need to happen for this team to kind of stay afloat, get back, because, we say this every year, no one's running away with this division. We saw the entire division get embarrassed this week. Someone tried to argue, the Bucs didn't get embarrassed. Well, they were down 20 in the fourth quarter at home of a primetime game. Yes, the Ravens, they're my pick for the Super Bowl, but we don't need to glaze the Bucs. They did not play well in that game. and they are now in a very similar situation the Saints have found themselves in, because they're not going to have Chris Godwin. They're not going to have Mike Evans. They already lost Jamel Dean. He's on IR. So they're going to have to figure out how to win, just like the Saints are going to have to figure out how to win. The difference is they at least have their quarterback. But they're in a bad situation too. So, like, I think Trey Palmer's already on IR. So they don't have any receivers. Anyway, so we'll go through all that. But, first things first, speaking of receivers, the Saints did bring in a receiver. Right. And he's a guy that Saints fans probably are familiar with, just because this was a guy that they were really looking at signing ahead of the 2022 season. But the Chiefs swooped in at the last minute, offered more money. And the Saints have always kind of been that team that's like, this is our deal. We're not going to get into a bidding war. If you have a better deal, go sign it. And he did. He signed with the Chiefs. He won back-to-back Super Bowls. Probably not complaining about that situation. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the guy I affectionately call Exxon Valdez-Scantling. So he was on the Bills this year. Wasn't really that big of a part of the equation. Then the Bills went and traded for Amari Cooper, so they released Marquez Valdez-Scantling, guy who has been kind of a deep threat in the NFL over the course of his career, played a lot of years with Aaron Rodgers. As always, it's funny because if I had to comp him to anyone in the modern NFL, like the last 10 years, it'd be Ted Ginn, who the Saints also liked, the guy whose hands were very questionable throughout the course of his career, but had the ability to go downfield and make big plays. And that's something the Saints team needs because Rashid Shaheed is on IR.
Yeah, it was really puzzling to see, obviously, the drop-off this season, at least in Buffalo. I know new scheme, new quarterback, whole new setting for him. But what is it, just 2 grabs on the year for Scantling? And you figure a guy like Josh Allen would definitely get a guy like him involved more. And obviously, when Cooper comes around for them, makes him a little more, I guess, disposable. And I guess to the Saints' fortune right now, because I'm not expecting, fireworks here with this signing, but at least it gives you a veteran presence here in this wide receiver group that really does have a bunch of young dudes. Obviously, Cedric Wilson Jr. not, but there's just still a lot of younger targets you're relying on, and I see Scantling at least someone that can bring a more mature voice to the group.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Is okay, you kind of need a veteran presence in there, and it's also a guy that can make plays downfield. And as much as this team likes Mason Tipton, I just haven't seen him be able to do that. And
right.
You look at MVS, which is what I'm going to call him from here on out. MVS, solid, abbreviation nickname. Can't hate it. But every year of his career, he has had a reception of at least 46 yards or longer. So his long reception in 2018, 60 yards, then 74 yards, 78 yards, 75 yards, 57 yards, 46 yards. He can stretch the field. Again, the hands aren't perfect, but I think he's going to add an element to this offense that you need, and you just simply don't have without Rashid. And so this is DA talking about adding MVS on the coaches show last night, chatted with Mike Haas, Bobby Hebert. And we'll have a few more clips from this throughout the course of the show. But this is what he said about MVS.
Yeah, well, look, he brings experience, number one, at playing the receiver position, with Shaheed being out, and then obviously Olave in the concussion protocol. We felt like bringing in somebody with experience was something that we needed at the receiver position. He brings a speed element to the position that we lost with Shaheed, and so we just felt like this could be a potentially good fit for us. I think it really just depends on how fast he gets in, assimilates, into the offense, into the terminology, the things that we're doing offensively as to what his availability will be and how soon that'll be.
Right. Yeah, and so part of the question was, hey, will he be available on Sunday for the game against the Chargers? I would bet that he is.
Kind of have to.
Yeah, and part of that is just because, hey, I'm mainly asking you to run go routes. Like, how you're not going to have him be a huge part of the offense, but it's not all that complicated to say, hey, bud, go run fast. So if this was a slot receiver or someone you would have like significantly involved in kind of blocking schemes, right? I would say maybe you kind of keep him in active this upcoming week and go from there. For MVS, I think it probably would make sense to play. And they had him in for a workout on Monday. He met with the coaching staff. Clearly all that went well. Clearly he passed his physical. He's in good shape. And, he was just kind of phased out of the offense in Buffalo. He never really had part of that. And,
right.
He hasn't, and that's the thing, he hasn't really been a volume guy at any point in his career. The most catches he's had in a season was with the Chiefs in 22. He had 42 catches, 687 yards, 16.4 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. He did have a touchdown in the Super Bowl last year against the 49ers. So, he has experience playing in big games. The Saints love themselves some former Chiefs. Like we've talked about that. Like they have a ton of former Chiefs on this roster. He's just another one. So yeah, we'll see. Like I'm not mega optimistic. I don't think he's going to change a ton for the Saints, but they needed some speed. They needed a downfield option, and they got one, so you can't be mad about it.
And I mean, there's a little bit concern right now still with, just hearing that Chris Olave also still just in the concussion protocol. We don't quite know. No, you feel like will be good come tomorrow kind of thing?
I don't know about tomorrow, but I expect to have him back. Like I'm kind of just guessing here, but I don't think that like people here, he's still in the protocol as of Monday. You have to go through a full practice. Part of the concussion protocol is you have to get through a practice before you can clear the concussion protocol. And you know what they haven't done since last week?
Practice fully.
So like there's physically no functional way for him to have cleared the protocol between Thursday and now. So I think people react to that. And maybe he is still having concussion symptoms and it is an issue, but being in the protocol, just that information on its own is not a sign that things are going poorly. It's just, he would be in the protocol one way or the other at this point. Well, now if he's not at practice on Wednesday, then that's a negative sign because it's going to be, you really want to see either limited or full on that line. You want to see him out there because if he's unable to get out there, that's a sign that he still has concussion symptoms and the physicality of that workout will be a problem for him. And that will make it tough for that to change in the next 2 days and for you to clear. But I expect, it's been a while since he's played, right? Like we're talking 2 weeks because you had that short week and, he's gone through this before. He understands the process. That's not necessarily a good thing, but I expect to have him out there. And I think the Saints are going to get a few guys back this week. And that's when you look at the schedule itself, you have 10 days, so you should be the rested team. The Chargers played on Monday night, so you're getting the same situation. The Bucs came in with that extra rest, and the Saints played on a short week. Now you're getting that advantage. So I think guys that you could potentially get back: Taysom Hill, Chris Olave, Lucas Patrick, Cesar Ruiz, Pete Werner. That's a lot of guys. If you can get all those guys back in, and that changes things for you. Now, will it be enough? Is it going to change your fate on defense? I don't know. But you give yourself a fighting chance. I think Derek Carr, he's progressed to throwing. He's been doing throwing sessions. He did one on Monday. He's scheduled to do another one on Tuesday. This morning, like he's probably already done it as we record this podcast. And I think that's kind of a situation where you're like, hey, okay, throw. We'll see how your body feels afterward. Throw again. We'll see how you recover from that. And then you'll start to figure out, okay, how far out is he? I think the Panthers game in week 9 is probably a realistic target, but it's very, very unlikely he plays in week 8.
Well, I'm glad to hear with Olave, just because I figured with his past history with the concussions, I didn't know if it was taking longer for him to clear this time around, but that makes sense though, of having to go through a full practice. I
mean, it might be like, we just don't know. And the thing is, like, just still being in the protocol at this point, it's tough. And like, he's cleared in a week before. We've seen him have a concussion and play in the next game. The problem is this last game was Thursday Night Football. So you really didn't have a chance.
No, you were screwed, right?
Even push that. So again, I'm just saying, like, I hesitate to say, well, he's still in the protocol, we should be concerned. It's really just kind of static. We don't know right now whether he's in, and the coaching staff is not allowed to share any details of that process. It's part of the NFL, rules regarding the concussion protocol. Like, the coaches will get fined if they give out any details in that vein, but we'll have to see. Either way, I expect to see several players back. And if you can get Chris back, and we can, we're talking about Spencer Rattler. We're going to talk a lot about Spencer Rattler in this segment as we go. That's what I want to talk about now. But like, one of the things we have not seen Spencer Rattler with is Chris Olave. Like, they played 3 snaps together. He got hurt, fumble 6. And then that game felt like, man, we are climbing uphill the entire way because of that play. And it is a lot easier to be effective when you have kind of that security blanket of a guy who can get open quickly. And I think that's one of the big issues when you're a young quarterback and you're just like, you don't want to throw in these tight windows, but you can't necessarily trust guys to create early separation. Whereas Olave is as good as there is in the NFL at creating quick separation. And so I think that'll make a big difference for him, but we'll have to wait and see.
No, definitely. You look at obviously with the offensive line, and then you're limiting Rattler with targets too. It's like you just clearly not set up for success for a young player. Shoot, even if Derek Carr does come back, he's got his own issues to be able to work through too with what the Saints have right now.
Yeah, and that's why I think if you could get Ruiz back, if you could get Patrick back, you have the majority of your offensive line there. The only guy you'd be missing would have been Eric McCoy. He is technically eligible to come back off IR this week. He won't. He's probably still a few weeks out, but he's getting closer. We did see him out there. So hopefully, if you can stay afloat, which that's a big if, you can get him back. You start to get some of these players back. Now, there are some players you're not getting back. Paulson Adebo is not coming back. Rashid Shaheed is not coming back. You're going to kind of operate like you did last year on the outside with, in base reps, you're going to have Alontae Taylor go outside and play the outside corner position. And then in nickel reps, you're going to have him play the nickel, and you're going to have Kool-Aid come on and play the outside corner position. It's how they operated last year when Marshawn was out, and they would have Ike Yadam be at the outside corner in nickel reps, and then Alontae take the outside corner reps in base. So you're going to do that. But either way, so one of the things that Dennis Allen came out and said on Monday, again, you could have, if this was Sean Payton, I kind of feel like he would have slow played it. But I think one thing that the Saints are very, very cognizant of is we want to instill confidence in a young player. We do not want the young quarterback who we've empowered to be our starter, to feel like we are just waiting for the first opportunity to pull the rug out from under him.
Yeah.
Because and I think there's value in that. Like if you're committed to a guy, be committed to a guy. Now, if I'm Jake Haener, I'm kind of annoyed because you told me, hey, this is a even-footed battle, and like the one chance I got to go on the field, I did as well as you could have possibly done. You could say it's garbage time. I would say the entire second half of that game was mostly garbage time. But either way, this is what, DA kind of said in his press conference. Hey, we are going with Spencer, and, kind of left it at that. Talked about, hey, he's done some good things. We have to pass protect for him better. This is what he said on the coach's show with Bobby and Mike last night.
Now, Coach Allen, when you look at, obviously, the trigger man, the quarterback position, Jake Haener, he comes in there. He threw 4 passes, completed 3, but it seems like, okay, I'm going to be a professional. He threw a nice touchdown pass, and whether Derek Carr is available or not, is it maybe, okay, Spencer Rattler, here's another opportunity for you. You're going to have like a mini bye to get ready to go against the Chargers, and then Jake Haener's kind of in the bullpen? I mean, how do you handle that, considering you just got to try to get production on offense when you start a Derek Carr is out? But could it be a 1-2 maybe punch or combination with Rattler and Haener, just trying to get the offensive quarterback position playing at the highest level?
Well, yeah, look, I think you're right. I think Jake came in and did some nice things there at the end of the game. I mean, that was a really good job of him getting us into the right check and maxing up the protection to take advantage of the blitz and throwing the touchdown pass down there in the red area. So I was pleased with what we saw there. I think, in particular, when you're talking about a couple of young quarterbacks, both of them need as many reps as they possibly can get to be able to go in there and be effective. So I think it's hard to go in and say, hey, we're gonna play both these guys, and they're gonna get a certain amount of plays or reps or whatever the case may be. Look, I've seen a lot of really good things that Spencer's done. I think we got to do some better things around him. I think his supporting cast needs to help him out a little bit, and I think he needs to continue to improve. There were some things that, like, just understanding when you're going to be hot, and then don't take a bad play and make a bad play worse. So those are some of the things that you deal with a young quarterback. But then I see him create things with his feet. I see the very first play of the game, we get a boot out to the left-hand side, and we get the edge cut, and he presses the edge and makes a great pass down the field, and we create an explosive play. And so we got to be able to be more consistent, in being able to do those things. And look, the quarterback needs to play better, but I think the players around him need to help him too.
Yeah, and I think that final point is the one that DA is kind of leaning on when he sticks here. It's like, hey, when we have done well around him, when the supporting cast has played well, Spencer has played well. When he's kind of been let down by his offensive line, by some of the pass catches, dropping balls, right? And things have gone poorly, but and the stats bear that out. Like, I looked this up according to PFF. So when you've kept Spencer clean, when he has not faced pressure, he's 37 to 52, 71.2%, about 300 yards, a touchdown, interception. That interception was the throw to Shaheed, where he just didn't get it out far enough. And it was still it was the right read. He just didn't deliver it probably where it needed to be delivered, and it got picked off. Zion McCullum made a nice play. That was the interception. The touchdown came on a play that he actually got blitzed but didn't face pressure. That's why it's an interesting statistic, because like that's the Bucks did blitz, but that snap of the touchdown goes down as a non-pressured snap, which is just kind of funny. It's almost like, hey, if you pick up a blitz, it's you're in an advantage, and the Saints just don't do it often enough. When he's been under pressure, 10 of 23, 43.5%, 117 yards, interception, 11 sacks, right? He's been sacked 11 times through 2 weeks. And so part of that is the offensive line. And like DA said, part of that is the quarterback understanding, hey, there's a free rusher. I got to get this ball out hot, right? And that's what happened when I pointed out after that first blitz, that sack fumble early in that game. You can say, hey, that's on the offensive line. It's not really. The offensive line wasn't trying to block that guy. Like, that guy was not in the protection plan. You understand as a quarterback, if that guy's coming, we have no one to block him. Either I make him miss or I get the ball out hot. You can't stand there and just get hit from behind. And that's what happened. So that's kind of a young quarterback learning thing. And so I think the idea is, hey, we're not going to just say, well, you struggled in your first 2 starts, or we did nothing for you, and now we're going to go with the other guy. We're going to trust that you're going to learn from these things. The issue with kind of trying to evaluate week 7 after week 6 is you didn't really have time to make corrections after week 6, right? Like, you kind of just played a game, struggled, had like one day to go over the film, played another game, kind of did a lot of the same stuff. So you hope that with a 10-day window and some actual time to install a game plan, that you will see some of these corrections take place. And so I don't expect Derek Carr to play. There's some people out there who seem to think, hey, he's going to make this miraculous recovery. I don't buy it. I think they're getting ready to play Spencer again, and we'll see how it goes. I'm rooting for him. Now, the issue with that last game is the Broncos really didn't blitz that much, and it was still a problem, and that was on the offensive line. But when Spencer's been blitzed, 16 of 30, 53.3%, 126 yards, touchdown, interception, and 5 of those 11 sacks have come on plays where he's blitzed.
Yeah, I give definitely props to the team for giving Spencer still another shot, because I figured for sure, honestly, for me, that, all right, you saw a little something from Haener at the end of the game. Plus, it looked like Rattler got dinged up a bit. I think it's a hip flexor, they called it. And maybe, give him a rest going into this matchup and let, Haener try at it. But it seems Rattler's good enough to go, obviously, and they're sticking with him.
Yeah, the health isn't an issue. I think it was more like he was just kind of gimpy. He'd been hit so many times in that game, and you just save him. Like you were not coming back. The only things that could have happened in that game for Spence were bad. And so yeah, and you could have gone both ways, right? Like, you could have kind of slow played it and said, hey, we're gonna kind of evaluate this. But the problem is, you got to get him, whatever quarterback you're going to start, you got to give him all the reps in practice, because he needs all the reps he can get, whoever you're playing. And that's why, like, Bobby's question was kind of like, he's like, oh, do you consider playing both guys? Do you consider, hey, if you throw this guy in here, if he doesn't got it, you go to get it. If he doesn't have it, you go to the other guy. The problem is, like, you're talking about young players who need every single rep you can give them in practice ahead of these games. So you'd be doing them a disservice by saying, hey, we're going to split these reps up just in case we have to play the other guy. It's like, no, it's really not how it works. You just got to pick whichever one you think gives you the best chance to win and go with it. And clearly they think that Spencer gives them the better chance to win right now. And he's also kind of the guy that you're developing, right? Like, as much as they want to say, hey, we like both guys, clearly they like Spencer better, right? Like, you can say all offseason, hey, we like both these guys. We feel like they both have a chance to succeed in the NFL. We want to develop them both. You have made a statement that you are developing Spencer. And so I at least appreciate the conviction of, like, once you make that statement, you're going to stick with it. Because the worst case scenario would be, hey, you go with Spencer for 2 games, he struggles. You go with Jake, he struggles too. And suddenly you just kind of are flat. Like, you don't even, now you not only do you not have any wins to show for it, you are actively, like, saying, we don't got anything.
Right. We have nothing at quarterback.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that Spence can kind of pick some things up. My only issue is like it's funny, like, one of the things that was so jarring about that final drive is, like, you saw Jake go in there and make a check. And I'm like, whoa, what's that? What's he doing there? I didn't know that was like, what? I didn't know that was part of the game plan. You can adjust, like, the play at the line. Wow. Like, what? And I don't know, maybe he did that unilaterally. Maybe the coach wasn't happy about that. I don't know. Cause it was strange. It was like, that is not something I've seen happen in 2 weeks. Where, like, he saw the coverage and then he was just, like, checked out of it into something else, and it worked. Maybe he caught the defense off guard because they weren't expecting it. I don't know. But that's the one thing that I worry about with a young quarterback is how often is he getting fooled by the coverage, and how often is he getting fooled by the pressure looks, and is he making the right checks, the right reads? And it's impossible to know. Like, you can only know if you have the call and you're watching it back on film and you know what people are supposed to be doing, whether they execute it or not, whether the back, messed up his protection, whether he got the rule wrong, whether he was supposed to come out this way and he went out the other way, whether he was supposed to check and, kind of give a hip and then get out as a release. I don't know. But You got to be better, because 11 sacks through 2 weeks, like you're going to die if you take 5.5 sacks a game. Like, you will not make it through. Like, we see all these injuries across the NFL, a lot of quarterbacks going down. Jaden Daniels got hurt. Like the Raiders lost their quarterback. The Deshaun Watson, like a lightning bolt came down and wiped out his Achilles. Injuries happen. You got to protect your quarterbacks, and we'll see how that goes. I didn't even mention Derek Carr's hurt. Like, guys get hurt, but you can't be taking 5 sacks a game. So they got to figure something out.
No, I think we've talked a lot about it. Just the injury plague this season has been just brutal to teams. Tampa's caught up to the Saints.
Yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason to it either. It's like we can say it's only the Saints, and the Saints, it seems like the Saints are more heavily impacted than a lot of teams are. But I mean, yeah, you watch that Monday night game, and it's like, geez, these guys are dropping like flies. And it's nothing the medical staff can do to say, like, hey, don't dislocate my dude's ankle right now. But geez, like, it's this league, one of the struggles the NFL has is it's like they're trying to improve player safety, and they do that by taking away practice time, by keeping guys off the field. And you just have to wonder if that's actually making it worse, and because their bodies are not ready. And like it over the course of time, like, you're going to look at it and be like, man, this is a problem, because none of our stars are out here for the big games. And the money is made on the stars. Like, no one shows up. No offense to Bub Means, but no one's showing up to Thursday Night Football to see the Bub Means show, right?
Except Mama and Papa Means.
yeah. I mean, like, I love me some Bub Means, but that's not who you're there to see. Like, I want to see Chris Olave. I want to see the stars. And it's a problem, and the NFL is going to have to figure it out, because it's not going well.
No, and obviously, us being centered on the Saints, it seems like there's just been this huge target just on them. But man, oh man, especially this weekend of just getting to kick back and watch a ton of football, not having a Saints Sunday on tap. You just saw, like, oh, another one goes down, and this one, it's like, it's been ruthless in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that was nice. Not nice isn't the right word, but like, there was some nice perspective gained by being able to kind of just go around and watch some of these games, because I'm like, all right, I guess the Saints aren't alone here. Like, it seems like every game I watch, someone very important to their particular team is getting carted off the field, or out for the game, or Deebo Samuel has a tummy ache. I don't know what's going on with him. Like, It's one thing or another. Brandon Ayuk went down. He's done for the year. Like, yeah, man, it's brutal out there, and we're not even halfway done with the season. So we'll see how it goes, but. All right, let's hopefully the Saints can, maybe they got their bad luck out of the way early, and then, because that's why, like, we're going to talk about the upcoming schedule. One of the reasons it's like you should feel like, hey, you should have at least some chance, if you play good football, play the football you're capable of playing, to take advantage of some of these matchups, because a lot of these teams are in the situation you've been in. Right. You think the Browns are looking at their schedule being like, we got this. They're trying to figure out how they can avoid playing Jameis at this point. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah, my one wish for the season might come true, where the Saints end up playing Jameis.
You're going to end up playing Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston in the span of 3 weeks. Although Andy Dalton feels like he's hanging on to that job by a thread. Like, what's the point? If you're going to lose all your games anyway, why not just let Bryce lose them?
I have no idea what the Panthers organization is thinking in general, obviously.
It made sense when he was winning a game or two, but like now it's
like, yeah, what's going on? Yeah. What are you doing, guys?
So we'll see. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to hear from Saints senior offensive assistant Rick Dennison. I had to think about his title for a second there. It's got a weird title. He's basically managing the run game, managing the offensive line, helping John Benton, helping those guys kind of come up with a plan. He's been working with Clint Kubiak for a long time. So he chatted with Bobby and Mike Haas. They went through a lot of that. So we'll come back. We'll play that interview. This is Inside Black and Gold. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller, getting you back into the week. It's kind of a weird schedule. We didn't do our normal Monday kind of catch-up podcast because the Saints didn't play on Sunday, and I figured we posted a podcast basically on Saturday, so that would have been a good time for anyone who was looking for a podcast to listen to that one, because that was like a 2-hour gosh dang podcast. So we're doing this on a Tuesday. We don't have the initial injury report for the week, so that'll be in our next episode. We're going to break that down. We did go through like, hey, the Saints should get some of these guys back. A handful of them we know aren't coming back, but we'll figure that out in the next episode. But this one, I did want to play. We had Rick Dennison on Sports Talk with Mike and Bobby, kind of going through, hey, why is the run game so terrible? Why haven't we been able to run the ball? Why is nothing working? Why are the trenches a nightmare for everyone involved? And I thought he had some good insight there. So let's hear that interview.
And Rick Dennison, the senior offensive assistant, the most experience of the Saints assistant coaching staff, joins us. Coach, how are you tonight? Wish it was under better terms, but it is what it is.
It is. I'm doing all right. Just grinding away, trying to find some first downs over here.
Sounds good. Wanted to pick up on something that Dennis kind of closed with, without getting too specific, but the ability to get some help back on that interior line from an injury standpoint for guys that have been out. And again, not without specificity, but just the ability to get some of those guys back must be huge.
Yeah, it is. It's just having the experience and the guys we lost have a lot of snaps under their belt. Now it helped these young guys to get some snaps, but moving forward, we need all the experience and especially with some of the defenses we have coming up.
Now, Coach Dennison, have all the years now, 28 seasons in the National Football League. Have you ever been in a situation where you're in your fourth starting center and you're not even at the midway point? I'm thinking that's a big concern if you're on to your second center. I would probably guess that you haven't witnessed you're onto your fourth starting center and you're not even at the midway point in the season.
No, I've definitely been 2 and 3, but I don't think I've gotten to 4, especially this early. But each position, each year, it's you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So you train as many guys as you can, and hopefully the experience helps as they go through. But just like I said, we're trying to get guys back, and they'll be welcome.
Coach Dennison, would you agree with this that, and you might tell them in the meetings, because I've been in those offensive line meeting rooms, that you're not going to get any glory. You're an offensive lineman. But if they're not talking about you, that means you're doing your job. Remember all the all what we did in the offseason, OTAs, minicamp, training camp with Trevor Penning? We don't even talk about Trevor Penning anymore. So I said, I don't know if he's all pro or not, but he must be doing something right. We're worried about us stopping the run on our defensive line. So just talk about the development of Trevor Penning, because I know that has to be a good thing because we haven't singled him out as of late.
Yeah, that's anonymity. Is that how you say it? That's important for an offensive lineman. If they're not calling your name, you're not getting penalties and you're not getting whipped. No, Trevor certainly has progressed. He's still got some steps to go for sure, but he's settling down. JB does such a great job coaching those guys and, telling where all the help is. And I think that's where Trevor has really, really grown. He knows where to push a guy, where to lose because he's got help there, and how to keep out of trouble. So I think that's what he's done very well.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about your kind of relationship with new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak? I know he was bouncing around about where he might watch the games and from press box or field, and he had spoken about how you have been such a big help with the run game. You're kind of his eyes up in the press box watching things. Just, I guess, how that relationship with Clint has worked out.
Well, this is my third stint with Clint, but I've known him since he was quite young. He and my oldest son were teammates in high school and actually Little League going up into high school. But, he wanted to be closer to the quarterbacks, closer to the players, which I thought was pretty accurate. I think you need to do that if you're calling plays. You got to get a good feel for what's going on. So he just asked me, making sure that check some boxes that he likes to see up there. And having been with him in a few different places, like I said, it makes it pretty easy. We communicate pretty well, and he tells me what he wants, and I try and help him out as best I can.
Now, Coach Dennison, always a lot of promise. We've had high praise on him, and he looks legit. that being Fuago at left tackle. Would you say is that being objective, if you graded maybe his performances in his early career, that he struggled somewhat against the Broncos? Was it maybe the speed off the edge, or what with that? Is that a fair assessment of him, or what was your take on his play against Denver?
Well, it certainly wasn't his best game, and we're looking for people to keep improving, and Tally's it means a lot to Tally, so he'll regroup and just like the rest of them and get better, take everything, the coaching points to heart and get better at it.
Coach, I'm kind of looking at your just overall experience. You played for the Broncos, you coached a lot for the Broncos, but played for the Broncos, and if my math is correct, you were with them in '89. And they go 11-5, win the AFC West. But in '90, and they still got Dan Reeves, still got John Elway, 5-11, and they lose. You lose 6 straight. That was your final year, and then back to 12-4 in '91. And I guess there's no magic potion here. There's no magic pill, but you've been around, and so these 6-game losing streaks. How do you? Is it? In fans are tough to one game at a time thing, but it is what it is. And how do you play your way out of this? And maybe more importantly, how do you not let the train go off the rails?
Well, I think it's a positive attitude, and learning from your mistakes. If you try and, just put your head in the sand and just keep beating your head against the wall doing the same thing over and over again, then you'll end up doing the same thing and losing. We're trying to look at things like, all right, maybe we need to change this up. Not wholesale changes, but how you approach things and make sure that the players understand, we're trying to put them in the best situation. And like I said, keep them positive and understanding that we have good guys. We got good guys coming back, and they're working their tails off to try and get wins. And if we're all in it together, we got a great chance.
Coach Dennison, I guess what goes around comes around, and the Saints have not had good fortune against Denver in New Orleans. We're only 1-5. I think you might remember that game in 1988 when you were part of that Denver team when we whipped y'all 42-0. you remember
Bobby, he's a guest on this show.
Yeah.
John Elway, the great John Elway. Come on.
No, I remember that year we had a few that we got beat up. We played on one Halloween night in Indianapolis, and we were beat before we even got off the bus. But no, you're right. I remember that. I remember those days, but I remember some good days. So just like you said, what comes around, goes around, comes around, whatever the saying is. But you keep grinding away and trying to learn from your mistakes. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's what some of these guys are. They were taking notes today when we were correcting them, and I thought that was awesome. That they're trying to get better at it and know that we're not playing our best football, but we're going to make strides to play our best football.
Coach Dennison, explain to the fans, because a lot of times, we're not blocking for the quarterbacks. Like, for instance, Spencer Rattler got sacked 6 times. I never got sacked 6 times in my life, and I can't move like Spencer Rattler, so the ball got to come out. Jake Haener comes in the game, the ball comes out. You score a touchdown. So just talk about maybe the combination, because they say, if the quarterback gets sacked, the offensive line not doing their job. But whether you're a tight end or you're running back, you just talk about protection and the blitz and everybody being on the same page and realize, we can't block everyone. The ball has to come out. A lot of times fans don't realize that the quarterback has to know if it's a blitz situation, cover 0, whatever, the ball has to come out. Just elaborate on that a little bit as far as explaining to the fans.
Well, yeah, we're certainly trying to block, and the problem is you don't have a crystal ball and you don't know exactly who's blitzing and what. So we cover our bases the best we can, but they can overload the back, or if we've only got 5 protecting, they can bring 6. And sometimes the route combinations don't time up to the quarterback's feet. Somebody gets bumped off or whatever. There's a lot of different things come into play other than the offensive line protecting. And unfortunately, we had a few that didn't go our way, but again, that's another thing to learn from, and Spencer, for one, will learn, and the line, if they miss somebody, they'll learn from that.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time, and for the record, Bobby, we talked about 1988. You won 3 Super Bowls with Denver, coaching and playing, so I feel like you did okay. So we appreciate
household name. He's a household name in Denver.
Very much so. One game at a time, turning around on Sunday in Los Angeles.
We will try. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, yeah, good stuff from Rick and Mike and Bobby. And one of the things that Rick said in that interview that I thought was interesting is like he pointed to Trevor Penning and he's like, "Hey, Trevor has gotten better." Like he says, "I think Trevor has really grown he knows where to push a guy, right? Where to lose because he's got help there." And I think that's an underrated part of playing offensive line because you can't win every rep. But you can survive if you understand where you can lose and where you can't lose, and how to make sure that when you get beat, that player is going to a spot of the field that is not going to impact the play nearly as much as it could, right? And that was the problem in the preseason where we saw like Trevor, he's got help and then he gets beat clean on the outside and the guys around him, or he doesn't have help and then he gets beat clean to the inside and the guy has a direct line to the quarterback. I think that's when you look at Trevor this year and what he's gotten better at. I think that's what it is, you might not win every rep. You might allow a pressure, but it's not like a straight free rusher sack that kind of blows up everything you've been trying to do. The way, like, if you go back to that Titans opener last year, that's what Arden Key was doing. Arden Key was just beating him clean and just getting a free run at the quarterback. And you can't allow that. And while I don't think he's had a perfect season, he has struggled. I think the entire offensive line struggled against the Broncos in ways that we had not seen yet this year. And I think part of that is a short week. Part of that is being undermanned. I think from where he was, what the conversations we were having after that first preseason game against the Cardinals to now, that's like, one of the things I want to do if and when this season gets to the point where it's like we are exclusively talking about next season, which, one more loss might get us there. Definitely 2. I want to go through a list of like, okay, who are the core pieces of this team that you're going to build around going forward? And, if you had asked me last year, I would not have put Trevor in that group. If you ask me right now, I feel like, hey, Penning, Fuaga, some of these guys, Alontae Taylor, like these are the pieces that you can maybe move on from some veterans. But like when the dust settles and you have your kind of core group of players that you're like, this is what we have to build off of. It's starting to feel like he's a part of that. And that has to be the case with your first round pick. So it's not like we're saying like, wow, congratulations, you've come out of nowhere and become he's been a serviceable NFL player this season. So I have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, like you mentioned, at least it's been serviceable because things have not been good to the start of his career. The biggest thing that's unfortunate right now with Trevor, just obviously there's the positive, those baby steps in growth. It's, what woulda, coulda, shoulda been at this point because he's just behind the curve.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of, one of the things we also underestimate is like who's playing next to you, right? Sure. And having Caesar play to his left is a much greater, is a much more positive situation than, no offense to Landon Young, but like they're going to attack Landon Young.
Absolutely.
Like, and I think Caesar played well the first 2 weeks. I think he struggled in week 3, and we know now that he was dealing with a significant knee injury that has now kept him out. Like at the time we were like, man, he's getting whipped by Jalen Carter, and now it's like, oh, he had a pretty significant knee injury that he was trying to play through. So, you kind of take some credit away from that. But like in week 2, we were talking about, man, look how fast he's running, right? So no, Caesar's a good player, and he struggles in some matchups, but like when you're a young tackle that's trying to kind of figure things out and survive, having a more veteran player next to you who knows what they're doing and can maybe cover up for some of your mistakes, that's important. And the same can be said for Fuaga on the left side. I think Fuaga's regressed a little bit. And in that game in particular, like the Broncos didn't blitz a lot, but it's because they didn't have to blitz. Like they were winning off the snap, both if you believe PFF's numbers, which they're usually pretty close. Both guys allowed 7 pressures in that game, Penning allowed 1 sack, and Fuaga was credited with 3 sacks allowed. And you go to the tape and like, man, these guys getting beat a lot. And that's part of the problem is when you can't run the ball and you're asking these guys to just set and pass set constantly and just kind of pure drop back pass the way they were doing in that game. It's not going to go well. We knew that. We said that going in, right? Like one of my bold predictions was that Trevor was going to start all 17 games and play fine. Not play great, play okay, play well enough to not get benched. And that's what we've seen, but that doesn't mean that you can just throw him to the wolves. And that's what happens when you can't execute the play action because the run game's not effective and no one's buying it. You got a rookie quarterback that they're going to come after. They might not believe that he's going to identify some pressure, some games in the defensive line. You're going to show that A-gap pressure and drop out, and he's not going to read it correctly. That's all there. But you got to like Trevor's taken a lot of shit, and we've talked a lot of shit. So I think, I appreciate that Rick said that because I agree. Like, I think he's come a long way from where he was, and you hope that that's something that, like, you're talking about a guy in year 3. You're not looking at a guy who's a rookie and you're like, wow, he can develop like the Fuaga, but he is kind of so early on in that development stage that you do feel like, hey, okay, being a serviceable player right now, next year he's still under contract. Do you pick up that 5th-year option? Like, that's going to be a question the Saints have to answer. And I think there's a possibility you do.
No, going into this year, obviously there was big goal target, whatever you want to say on Penning because of, the past issues with injuries, the underperforming. But yeah, he has not been, I'm not going to say has been a standout player either though, but he hasn't been an issue.
Right.
It hasn't been a problem.
I mean, when you look at the Saints offensive line, you're looking at 3 backup interior linemen. It's like, it's hard to blame the 2 guys who were actually there. But one other thing that we can talk about and then move on. We talked about this a little bit, but Dennis Allen was asked again, kind of, hey, what have you seen from Kendre Miller? And this is what he said on WWL yesterday.
Yeah, look, I think certainly Kendre is a guy that we want to get more involved. He's got an explosive element to his game, in particular when you put the ball in his hands. And so that was good to see. I think we all kind of knew that was a quality that he had. That was one of the things that we saw when we drafted him. And so I think for him, it's some of the other things in terms of the protection, in terms of the route definition. Those types of things are things where he really has to, to work to improve. But certainly I think, putting the ball in his hands, in terms of the run game, he's got some make-you-miss ability. He's got the ability to run through some tackles. So I'm excited about what I think he can bring in that element.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen too, is like there don't seem to be a lot of players in the Saints offense right now that can actually make a guy miss, right? Like we talk about missed tackles for the Saints. When have the Saints forced a missed tackle? Like, who have you seen break tackles for the Saints that is not named Kendre Miller in those very few instances we saw last week? And you kind of heard it there too. Like there's some technical stuff that they still feel like he's a little behind on, right? Like the route definition, like he had a drop in that game. The pass protection, is he picking up the blitz correctly? Is he getting all the checks? Is he doing that right? But there's a point where the upside is too clear to ignore. And I think the Saints have kind of reached that point of like, yeah, this is frustrating. And we know, like, we would love to be in a position where we don't have to play a guy if he's not doing all the little things the way we want them to. But I don't think you have that luxury right now. I think you see a guy who can be explosive and you got to get him the ball. And so that's what I'm hopeful to see this week and beyond is like, they're still going to use Alvin. You're still going to have a big role for Alvin. And we didn't really talk about Alvin. He shot down the trade rumor stuff. Like that was like the thing over the weekend was a bunch of stuff that wasn't true, like a fake tryout for the team and Alvin trade requests that didn't actually happen. But you got to take the load off of him. And so I want to see Kendre get like 10, 12 snaps or 10, 12 touches, right? Like I want to see you get him involved early in the game and make it regular. Don't just make it be like, oh, 1 snap a drive and then he's out for the next 2 drives. Like I want to see those guys kind of filtering in and out of the field, make that a true committee and see what happens. Because it can't be worse. How can it be worse?
No, I'm once again, Jamal Williams with his 2 to 3 carries a game. It's just I don't understand what happened with his production. I know you've gotten behind in some games and had to get away from the run, but we saw, I think it was 11 carries week 1, 8 in week 2, and it was a steep drop off after that now.
Yeah, well, he hasn't produced with any of his touches anyway, so it's like, why give him touches at all? Like, just take all of those touches, phase him out, and give them to the young guy, because that's the guy who's making plays, right? Like, this isn't UNICEF. Like, we're not. This isn't a charitable organization that gives out touches to the needy, right? Touches mean something, and you got to be making plays. You got to be making guys miss. You got to be creating positive situations, and so the one guy that I look at in that game and say, when he touched the ball, good things happened, was Kendre Miller.
For sure.
Outside of that final drive, which that's where a lot of his yardage came from, because that's when you gave him the ball. So yeah, that's something that if we don't see I don't want to say steep, but a significant uptick in Kendre Miller usage over the next few weeks, I'll be very, very frustrated. Because it's not a mirage. Like, he is the most explosive player in that running back room.
Yeah, and obviously a guy that should be fully rested right now. And so you use that energy, please.
Yeah, a little bit. Should be. Now, will he get hurt? I don't know. Can he take that workload without?
I don't know.
I don't know. But we got to find out somehow. So might as well be this week. But all right, let's wrap up that segment. Thanks again to Rick Dennison for coming on WWL. You heard from Mike Haas, Bobby Hebert. Did a good job with that interview, I thought. And we're going to come back. We're going to reset. Okay, what do the Saints have coming up over their next 7 or so games? What do they realistically need to do to make this conversation in the second half of the season about this season and not about next season, right? Because we're a couple losses away from it being very much, hey, what's going to happen? Like, the games cease to matter and the conversation ceases to be about how can you win this week? And it ceases to be about who should you trade and what kind of draft pick are you looking at and that sort of thing. So we're going to look at all that and get back to it. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. And this is something I meant to bring up at the top of the show, and I kind of spaced on it. Steve, did you consider going to try out for the Saints this weekend? Did you think about it? Did you like, hey, they need me. It's time. Strap the cleats back on and get out there.
Yeah, if they need a totally worthless body on the field, I'm your guy. Because I don't know how much I'm contributing, but I think it's definitely dedication to the joke to the fans that did show up for the open auditions that the Saints were supposedly having. Bravo.
I'm just curious how many people actually thought they were going to try out for the Saints. Because it seems like some of them did, and some of them were kind of just like joking around
with the joke.
But like there was a good number of people who showed up. Willie Gay tweeted about it. It was like, guys, this was fake. And it's funny because, like, of course it's fake. Of course. Who sees that in a suit? Like, it was a good edit.
A real life Invincible right here in New Orleans.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the Eagles are the reason that's a plausible idea. But even then, it's like not really plausible. Like, yeah, they made a movie about a guy who got a special teams tackle. Like, that's what he did. Like, that's what Mark Wahlberg tried out for the Eagles and one game at a special teams tackle. But
then you'll get people, oh man, remember the beer man though.
I don't know. I don't know your reference.
Kick punt returner on the Saints. He ended up making the team. Was a former beer man. That was a delivery man, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen this year. But it does say something about like exactly where the Saints are at from a health perspective. That like people saw that and didn't immediately be like, "What is it? Why? What?" And it was a good edit. I'll give him credit. It was a good edit. I know the Saints weren't thrilled about it because it did look official, like. And they did a good job of making it like it wasn't just the press release. It was a screenshotted Facebook post, not really a Facebook post, but like they set it up so it looked like they screenshotted a Facebook post to share it on other social media platforms. In reality, it was all an edit, obviously, but people showed up. And,
I thought well played by the trollers on that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess it's good. It's just like, is that what you're gonna do with your free time? Like, man. But either way, that's where we were. But the Saints are not going to have any tryout players, at least not, non-NFL players. They're not bringing Ryan Perlew in to right this ship. But hey, we do have a ship that needs to be righted, and someone's got to do it. And if not, then no one's getting out of this thing alive. But here's the thing. when you came into this season, when I went through this season game by game, this 7-game stretch was the one that I looked at like, hey, if you can get there with even like, 500 record, you should be able to put some distance between yourself and the rest of the NFC South in terms of like, you should be able to go 5-2 in this stretch of games. Like, it's a very reasonable stretch. Now, when you lose 5 games in a row and you look as bad as the Saints have doing it, then why would you then convince yourself that they're going to string together any wins?
I don't know.
It's just frustrating. Like, if you looked at this stretch after week 2, you'd be like, why wouldn't we win these games? And it just, so we'll see, right? Like, I feel like there's a point in this season that you get to a must-win territory of either you win this game or your season is effectively over. Now, a lot of people will tell you they're there already. They're not there yet. Like, you just need to win a few games in a row, and then you're right back to the range of 500, and you have a fighting chance over the final half of your schedule. But like 1 or 2 more losses, and that's like complete, like, because the team itself, and that's the thing, like the questions of the team are going to continue to be, how can you go win this game? Like, what do you have to do to go win a game? Because those are the only questions they're going to answer. Like, the players on the team are not interested in what your draft pick is going to be. The coaches on the team are not interested in what your draft pick is going to be, because they're not going to be here to make it. Right? They're out, their job, what they're getting paid for is to go out there and win games. And then as long as that continues to be the case, they're going to go out there and say, hey, we're doing whatever gives us the best chance to win. And there's a point in that season where it's still plausible. And right now that's still plausible. You lose another game, you're 2-6. You'd have to win out to get to 11 wins. Like, you'd have to go 9-1 to get to double-digit wins. You'd have to go 8-2 just to get to 9-8, the record that will probably leave you on the bubble. Like, that's not plausible. That's no front office is going to look at that and say, like, let's see what happens, or at least they should. So, like, we're close. We're close to that point. And I know people are going to be even hearing about this because they've given up, but it's like, you got to go. You got 10 days. You go out to the Chargers. You got to go friggin' win a game. You got to go beat a team on a short week that just lost to the Cardinals and scored 15 points doing it. Like, you got to go win that game. And then you come back and you face the Panthers, and you should win that game. So either you win a game and you kind of put yourself back into a track where you can say, hey, we're going to play better. We're going to get some guys back. We're going to get healthy, and we're going to get our quarterback, and we're going to do this. Or you continue to just flat out stink and everyone loses their jobs. So which is it, guys? Which do you want to be? That would be my hype speech.
All I heard I heard blah, 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 and then heard J.K. Dobbins and then blah, 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 Chuba Hubbard. I'm like, oh no, what are we going to do? Just the ineptitude, forget the Saints run game, but just stopping the run, tackling. I just don't know if that is something this team's capable at this point. I'm sure they're going to come a hell of a lot more revved up into this matchup after, I'm sure, getting chewed out after a Thursday night. It was a pitiful performance. I hate to say that, but it was the lack of energy, lack of oomph, and any kind of spark on the field. It just didn't look like you were disinterested out there. How, I don't understand with what was at stake. But yeah, I have no confidence right now just because of where the defense is against the run game. Number one, that's just my number one problem. So yeah, every week now I'm just going into it going, who the hell does that other team have at running back?
Who's their third string running back that's going to go off for 100 yards?
Right, exactly. That too.
Like, let's see. What's the Chargers depth chart right now? I know Austin Eckler's not there. You got J.K. Dobbins. Who's the backup to J.K. Dobbins' backup that we should be worried about?
Yeah, Gus is hurt.
Oh man, Hassan Haskins is gonna go off. Man, we're gonna get eaten alive by Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal. Yeah, get the buzz, get the gold jackets ready for those guys.
You laugh, but there might be a time on Sunday. All of a sudden, I'm looking down at stats, going, "Wait a minute, who's K Vidal? I got to look up K Vidal. Who is that?"
I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious, but I'm not being completely facetious. Like, I am kind of worried that that's going to be the case. Like, because everything we've seen has indicated that not only can they not stop the starting running back, they can't stop the backup or his backup. And like, what did Sean Tucker do yesterday? Let's see. Sean Tucker. What has Sean Tucker done since winning NFC Player of the Week against the Saints. Let's see. He had 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown against the Saints. Against the Ravens yesterday, he had 5 carries for 29 yards. It's not terrible. It's like a 5.8 yards per carry average. He had a catch for 9 yards. He did something. Yeah. He was involved, right? But 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown. That's a joke. That's not real. What the hell? But no, like that's the thing, right? And I think that, the offense should improve to some extent, right? Like you do need to be better on offense. And I think over the course of time, Spencer will get more comfortable. You get some players back. Hopefully Taysom Hill is like, it seems to this point, like he is the engine of this offense. And without it, you are just sputtering. He's like a very sharp tooth that you can put in. He's like a set of dentures that you put in the mouth of this offense with some very sharp teeth in there. And when he's in there, you're able to kind of gash some things. You're able to eat some like red meat. You're able to really kind of tear into some defenses. Without him, you're just like an old lady like gumming some Jello, like a turtle trying to eat a sirloin. Like it's not going to happen for you. You're just going to be sitting there, and then that's my analogy for this. And so hopefully the Taysom Hill is those it's the vampire dentures that you're throwing in there, and you can start to take some chunks out of defenses again. Because like right now, it just doesn't seem like that's the case. And we came into this saying like, let's preview the schedule. So let's actually preview the schedule, right? Yeah. So you could look at this. You have 4 weeks left before the bye, and I think you either go 3-1 in this stretch, or your season is effectively over. You can afford one loss in this stretch, and even then, it's like 4-0 is probably what you need, probably what you should get to like. If you don't go 4-0, 3-1 is just kind of keeping you afloat. But you should have 3 wins in this stretch, right? You're going to face the Chargers. LA's on a short week. They're not good. Like, none of these teams are good. There's a lot of mid teams in the NFL right now, and you're facing them. So you're going on the road to face the Chargers. You're going on the road to face the Panthers. You're coming home to face the Falcons. And you're hosting the Browns at home, a team that just lost its starting quarterback, although they could feasibly get better without their starting quarterback. They are getting Nick Chubb back, so he'll go off for 500 yards. But either way, like those are all games that, if we were talking about them after week 2, you'd be like, oh, we're winning all of those. Now you're talking about them after week 7 and week 8, and you're like, is it possible? Can we win a game? Like, is it even something that's like reasonable to talk about? No. So yeah. Anyway, that's the schedule. And then you have a bye, which, if you can win some games and get back to, 4-6, right? 5-6, 5-6. So that would be 3-1, right? That would get you to 5-6. Then you come off the bye, you face a Rams team at home that it's tough to really gauge where they're going to be, whether, they're getting Cooper Kupp back. Do they get Puka Nacua back? How does that change things for them?
And I just saw on the social Twitter sphere that Diana Rossini was reporting that supposedly Cooper Kupp is up for trade if someone's interested.
Well, right. And that's the thing. Like we talk about the Saints, and it's funny because the Saints are in such a bad situation because of the injuries. The Rams are in the same situation. The Rams are dealing with the exact same shit. The difference is they've have a track record of being good. So when you have a track record of being good and the excuse is everyone's hurt, you're like, yeah, okay, but we know when everyone's healthy, they can be good. The Saints have a track record of being mediocre. And so when everyone's hurt, it's like, yeah, this just means you go from being a middle of the pack team to being a bottom dweller team. And even when the guys are healthy, you're just going to get back to the middle. But, you talk about like, well, why is it an excuse? Like, look at what's happening to the Rams. Like, they're in a very similar situation from the perspective of like, we're losing all our players. Everyone's hurt. They've lost, so they started 0-2. They beat the 49ers, which figured that one out. And then they lost to the Bears, lost to the Packers. They just beat the Raiders, a team that lost their quarterback, right? So that should be a game. Like, when you looked at that game in the preseason, you were like, oh, they're going to lose that game. Now you look at it like, who wants it? Then you have the Giants, who should not be able to beat anybody. I don't know how they beat the Seahawks. Like, Daniel Jones is terrible. I expect at that point in the season, he will have been benched Derek Carr style so that they don't have to worry about because he has one of those contracts where if you have a significant injury, then the next year's salary gets guaranteed.
Yeah,
so
I don't want that.
As you get into weeks 12, 13, 14, you're going to be looking at a team that's like way out of it because they don't have a chance. I watched them just get boat raced by the Eagles. Saquon Barkley went off like 200 yards. And so they're probably going to end up, you're probably facing Drew Lock at that point. So like that shouldn't be a game that scares you. Then Washington is kind of the weird one. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on with Jaden Daniels' injury. I think he has a rib injury.
What do you know? Another injury to talk about, right?
Yeah, but that's the tough one because you kind of like, that's why when you look at a Jaden Daniels and you're like, I love what you're able to do with your legs. I love how you're able to play and extend stuff. But like in the NFL, you can't outrun guys. You got to be able to protect yourself. He's not a big dude, and that's what Lamar Jackson has dealt with like his entire career. Like he's had one season where he got all the way to the end of it, or like he didn't miss significant time. And it was last year and they got to the AFC Championship. This year, I think he's been smarter about it. And he's but like that's like all it takes is one hit and suddenly your entire season changes. And that's true of everybody. But when you put yourself at risk for it the way Jaden does, it's a little more concerning. So we'll see. He's week to week. He has a rib injury. I don't think that it would keep him out that long, but you'll have to see. That's week 15. Who knows what could have happened between now and then. And this is why what the Saints have done is so frustrating because I don't know, best case scenario. And again, I'm not saying this because I think it's going to happen. I'm just saying like best case scenario, Saints get some players back. Derek Carr comes back healthy. You string some wins together. You go 5-2 over this stretch. Right? Like I would say that's probably best case scenario. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm looking at it and it's like obviously that Washington game's a lot harder now than it seemed at the beginning of the year. It is at home at least. And yeah, playing at New York is not scary at all. Yeah, they have to. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it for sure.
Right. I think that's a good way to put it. Like in order to stay afloat in this season, you would probably have to go 5-2 over this stretch of games. And what makes this so frustrating is that is A, not implausible that it could happen, but it is B, only good enough to get you back to 7-7 with games left against the Packers in Lambeau on December 23rd. So it could be a snow game for all we know. Then you face the Raiders. Now you probably win that game. You should be a favorite in that game. Who knows where Vegas is at that point in the season. But then you go on the road to face the Bucs in week 18, a game that
could be monumental, right?
Where you will be, it might be a game that you have to win to get to 9-8. Like again, best case scenario, you go 5-2. And you're 7-7, you have to win 2 of your final 3 games to get to 9-8. And who knows, potentially miss the playoffs on a tiebreaker again. Like that's when you lose 5 games in the beginning of your season, the way the Saints have, you end up in a scenario where like, man, if everything breaks right for us, we go 9-8 and potentially miss the playoffs again. So we'll see how it goes. But that's why like one more loss and like, you can't even make that argument. Like you're wasting your time making that argument. But all that said, you do not have a single good team on this stretch other than Washington, and that's 7 weeks away.
Yeah, and even Washington, I mean, they're good, but they're not like, off the charts. They don't really scare you that much.
No, I mean, Jaden scares me, but it's not a good football team. They're a team that can win games and has shown being capable of winning games. The Falcons are probably the best team on that schedule at this point. They're 4-3.
Yeah, right.
Both the Bucs and the Falcons lost. And the Falcons lost to the Seahawks, a team that I would argue is not particularly good. Another team that lost one of their star players in DK Metcalf, and they lost that game by 20 points at home. So figure that one out.
No sense, right?
That's the Seahawks team that lost to the Giants at home. And I don't even know where they, a lot of it was, Kirk Cousins threw 2 interceptions. Michael Penix made his NFL debut. I don't think that's a sign that they're going to change quarterbacks, but we did see him. We do know what he looks like. So yeah, we're kind of we're back where it just feels right to be in the NFC South. hey, who wants it? Because in other divisions, 2-5 would feel like a death sentence. In the NFC South, it's like, all right, we're doing this again, I guess.
It was just a pretty fitting week that everybody just a big goose egg for wins in a division.
All right, it started off with the Saints losing so badly that you were like, all is lost,
right?
And then it was like all one NFC, all the Falcons and the Bucks had to do was go win a game, and they would be like the prohibitive favorite to win the division. They had home games, especially the Falcons. Like Falcons fans, as a Saints fan, you can always just revel in the misery of a Falcons fan because it's like, oh man, we are in control. We got the Seahawks. They're not that good. They've lost 3 games in a row. We're there in our house. We're feeling good about ourselves. And then they do that.
Yeah. The problem with Atlanta too, obviously, is still the fact that they haven't lost an NFC South game.
Yeah, no, and that's where the Saints are in a lot of trouble, right? That's why, you look at, hey, even if they went 9-8, they would have to do so winning all 3 of the remaining NFC South games.
For sure.
And that would only put them at 4-2, which is the same record they had last year in the NFC South and missed out on a tiebreaker. So it's not good. It's not good. But all you can do is go and beat the goddamn Chargers. And if you can do that, who knows?
No, we've had some brutal stretches, and the Saints have seemingly found different ways to lose every week, making our job so much fun.
But that's the thing. Like at this point, every time the Saints have gotten into this situation, it feels like they've turned around and won a few games in a row. So, they did it in 21. They lost 5 games in a row. They won 4 of their final 5. In 22, DA's first year, they won 3 of their final 4. In the 4th, they probably could have won if they actually cared a lick about that week 18 game against the Panthers. Like you were there. It was the worst football game I've ever witnessed.
Ever watched, right?
Like neither team wanted to win, and the Saints did themselves a favor and lost. But that would have been like 4 wins to close out the season. And then last year, you saw it again. Like they dropped to 5-7, then won 4 to their final 5 games. So we'll see. This team has been resilient. It does feel different this year. But, the only way you can, I don't think we ever got to this point. I was trying to make this point like 20 minutes ago. I think the only way, if you're the Saints, that you can get back to playing even remotely winning defense, like even defense remotely capable of winning a game, is to figure out how to stop the run. If you can't do that, then this isn't going to get any better. So that has to be the focus this week, is how do we stop the run? What do we have to do? I don't care if we have to devote more bodies to it. I don't care if you have to leave guys one-on-one on the outside. Like you have to man up across the board with Kool-Aid, and you have to, play cover 0 and just go up there. You got to stop the run. You got to. There's no way around it. If you can't stop the run, you will not win games. So if they need to plan this week, and they're going up against a team that's going to run the ball as whether you stop it or not. So we'll find out.
If the Saints had signed me after my tryout, I definitely would be stopping the run.
Yeah, I would consider myself to be a run stuffer. Yeah.
I'm stuffing something. I don't know what it is.
I'm sorry. I meant a roll stuffer. Like I went to an Italian restaurant on Friday, and I was just, I don't think that's the same thing. I don't think that's what they mean.
Oh, well, yeah, I could definitely stuff some pie or something like that, but I'm.
This is getting weird. But all right, that's gonna wrap that up. We'll have an episode later in the week breaking down injury report. Hopefully, we can get someone from Chargers land on here. Right. I don't know. Does anyone cover the Chargers? Do they even have any reporters covering the team? I'm sure they
maybe
have.
Maybe with the Harbaugh influence, they'll have their own bandwagon podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure the LA Times has a reporter that covers them, but he's probably split between like them and like literally 7 other things. So I'm sure there's a podcast or 2. We can try to get someone in here to tell me what the hell's been going on with the Chargers. Like Justin Herbert is like, he's we're going to start, and people are going to laugh when I say this, but like you look at the track record of Justin Herbert, and if things don't change for him soon in the sense of like making the playoffs and having success in the playoffs, he's going to start to get talked about in the same conversation as Derek Carr, of like a guy that everyone kind of agrees is a decent quarterback, but has never accomplished anything. And it's not necessarily his fault. Like I'm not putting it all on Justin Herbert, but like you say the same things about Derek. It's like, he's played well. He was an MVP candidate 1 year, but he never had a defense, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And then you get to year 10 and you're like, you've never won a playoff game. And Justin Herbert, it feels like from day one, we're like, this guy's pretty good. This guy should be able to win games at the NFL level. Let's see. Put a team around him. Put a team around him. Put a team around him. Oh, what are you in year 6 now? Right? Like you went in the same draft as Joe Burrow. What has he done? Quite a bit. Got the contract. Like he got paid. Like
no, the situation with the Chargers is one I don't get either. And we've talked about it a bunch with Sean Payton when he was leaving the Saints. It seemed like it was the most obvious destination was the Chargers with Herbert, and it didn't happen, surprisingly.
Yeah, I mean, like and like the records haven't been terrible. You went 6-9, 9-8, 10-7, and last year was 5-8. You fired the coach. You're 3-3 this year. But this has been like statistically the least impressive of his careers. It's not really about him so much as the offense, but like they got to figure something out soon because
he's at least been good touchdown to interception ratio, but the offense really hasn't been there.
He's been a good quarterback. There's no question
for sure.
He's been a good quarterback. The results haven't been there. So what do you make of that? And again, and I'm not saying that he and Derek Carr are the same guy, but at a certain point, you start talking about them in the same conversation of guys that for a decade in the NFL, we've all kind of agreed you're a good quarterback. But like, and I think Justin gets talked about in much, much more, flowery terms in terms of the ceiling that he might have. And
exactly.
Maybe did. But like same situation. Him and Kirk Cousins the same way. Like Kirk has never really done anything in the playoffs other than beat the Saints in that one game with the push-off. That's his one playoff win. Yeah, Daniel Jones is a playoff win. Like at Kirk's expense. I don't know. We'll see. This isn't what I was here to talk about, but it's just fascinating. Like, man, like because everyone you ask to a man and be like, "How do you think Justin Herbert's good?" Yeah, Justin Herbert's really good. Can't win.
You're right. It's for whatever reason, definitely the most of the blame goes to the Chargers, whether it's coaching or the lack of personnel around them.
Yeah, like even though the last time I saw him play in person, I guess I didn't even see him play in person. It was 2020 because it was COVID. It was that Monday night game where he was dominant as a rookie, and the Saints beat him anyway. So, like, that's just his career in a nutshell. Like, okay, Justin's really good, but you still found a way to lose, guys. Anyway, all right. That's it. That's all I got. You got anything else? Let's move on.
No, I'm ready to get back to winning, please.
Yeah, right. Like people, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are like, "Hey, just lose out, get a good pick." God, I need to see a win. I desperately just need to watch a decent football game. Like, I don't care what it does to the draft pick. We can worry about the draft pick in a few weeks. Like, just end the misery of this losing streak.
That sadly, Mrs. Geller has already cursed the team, saying they will not win again this year. I'm like, babe, stop.
When you're in this situation, it starts to feel that way. Like, it's like, who are we going to beat if we're playing this way? And that's why it's like the only guys who can change it are those guys. And maybe Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Woohoo! Pick him up in fantasy. Don't do it.
Toot toot. Hype train, baby. Chicka, 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 chicka. Anyway, okay. Who dat? Go Saints. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back later in the week. Peace.
See you, Saints fans.